Welcome back, my friends. I think that it is fair to say that everyone here in the US is concerned about gas prices. Inflation has been raging for a few years now. And gasoline prices are one of the major drivers of inflation. Gasoline is something that practically everyone needs to buy. And, as a percentage of household budget, people with lower incomes are more impacted by high gas prices. Normally, the price of crude oil is the main driver of gasoline prices. But that is not the only factor. Oil refineries need to process crude oil into gasoline. But all of the refineries in the United States are very old. And gasoline consumption trends do not appear to warrant construction of new refineries. So oil refining capacity can become the major factor in gasoline prices. What does this mean for consumers? What does this mean for energy markets? What does this mean for oil companies? What does it mean for the US economy? And what does it mean for the future of the United States? But, before we get into all of that, please hit the like button and leave us a comment below. We would love to hear from you. Please subscribe and hit the bell icon so that you are notified of upcoming videos when they are released. Oil refineries that are now closed will never restart, said Valero CEO Joe Gorder. Gorder made his comments U.S. Energy Secretary Jennifer Granholm at a recent White House. The one interesting thing that came out of it, too, was there was consideration for the ability to restart refining capacity that had been shut down, Gorder added. I think the general sentiment was that wasn't going to happen, Gorder added. People in the US are very concerned about gas prices and energy security. Most of the focus tends to be on the price of crude oil. But really, gas prices are more often impacted by refining capacity and refinery utilization. US refinery run rates were over 90% for most of the summer. There will never be another new refinery built in the United States, Chevron CEO Mike Wirth said in June. Building a refinery is a multi-billion-dollar investment. It may take a decade, said Wirth. We have not had a refinery built in the United States since the 1970s, Wirth added. Oil and gas companies would have to weigh the benefits of committing capital 10 years out that will need decades to offer a return to shareholders in a policy environment where governments around the world are saying, we don't want these products to be used in the future, Wirth added. Refinery utilization in the US fell to 89.5% for the first week of October. We have all heard of OPEC Plus and the high-profile production cut they just announced. OPEC Plus said that they will cut crude oil production by 2 million barrels per day, starting in November. OPEC Plus is a group, but they are mostly controlled by Saudi Arabia. And its high-profile leader, Mohammed bin Salman, or MBS as he is known. The US should pump more oil amid the world's energy crisis, said JP Morgan Chase CEO Jamie Dimon. Dimon made his statement to Congress just days after OPEC Plus, the organization of the petroleum exporting countries, met. OPEC Plus announced a production cut of 2 million barrels per day, starting in November. That is the equivalent to 2% of the global crude oil supply. Obviously, America needs to play a real leadership role, said Dimon. The United States is the swing producer, not Saudi Arabia, Dimon told reporters in an interview this week. Crude oil prices have risen sharply following the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Russia has been a major global exporter of oil and gas. The United States is teetering on the brink of recession. Russian natural gas supplies to Europe have ended due to damage to the Nord Stream pipelines. In my view, America should have been pumping more oil and gas, Dimon told reporters. The U.S. is the world's largest producer of oil, Dimon said. The United States produces almost 19 million barrels of oil every day. But the United States is also the largest consumer of oil in the world. So, there is only so much crude oil available for export. And, until 2016, oil exports of crude oil from the United States were illegal. Saudi Arabia produces 10.8 million barrels of crude oil per day, which is just over half of what the US produces. But Saudi Arabia uses only about 3.2 million barrels per day. Saudi Arabia is basically the de facto OPEC Plus leader and major exporter. OPEC Plus is saying that their production cut is in response to a weaker global economy. Inflation is raging in most countries around the world. Dimon also predicted a recession for the US within the next 6 to 9 months. For those of you not familiar with OPEC Plus, it is a group of some of the world's largest and most powerful oil-producing countries. OPEC Plus includes Saudi Arabia, Russia, Iran, Iraq, Algeria, Nigeria, and other oil-producing nations. It does not include the United States or Canada, two of the world's largest oil-producing countries. Saudi Arabia is seen as the informal leader of OPEC+. Gasoline prices at the pump have spiked in the past week or so. And President Biden wants to help the global economy by keeping prices low. OPEC+ recently agreed to cut production by 2 million barrels per day starting in November. Some production cut was expected. But 2 million barrels was at the very high end of the expected range. Recall that in 2020 worldwide crude oil prices briefly went negative during the height of the pandemic. At that time, OPEC+ made an emergency production cut of 10 million barrels per day just to stabilize the oil market. But large production cuts are uncharacteristic of the group. Crude oil prices peaked in June at more than $120 per barrel. But fears of the prospect of a global economic recession have put oil prices on a persistent downward trend since then. And high oil prices typically bring about demand destruction as people drive less when gasoline prices are higher. The production cut of 2 million barrels per day is intended to reverse this decline in oil prices. U.S. President Joe Biden has repeatedly asked the group to keep prices low by keeping production up. Midterm elections are coming up and incumbent administrations fare better when gasoline prices are lower. OPEC+ is scheduled to meet again on December 4 in Vienna. Most of the production cuts are expected to come from Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Iraq and Kuwait. Energy analysts point out that it is difficult for anyone to predict oil prices 2 months in advance these days. Oil prices have been on a roller coaster ride in 2022. Prices reached a 2-year high in March. But oil prices fell 25% between the middle of June and the end of August. The price decline has been driven by the expectation that interest rate hikes by the U.S. Federal Reserve would reduce demand for gasoline. And by concerns that COVID-19 restrictions in China would slow the Chinese economy and reduce oil demand. Although gasoline prices are generally high in the U.S., they never really got as high as many consumers feared. The average price of gasoline in the U.S. reached a peak of $5.02 per gallon on June 14. Consumers have been unbelievably lucky. All the worst fears have not materialized, said John Kilduff, partner with Again Capital. This is putting a lot of money back in people's pockets, he added. It gives people some relief and the economy some relief. It's like a huge tax cut for consumers, Kilduff continued. U.S. has become a major refiner and exporter of oil and petroleum products since 2016. The price of West Texas Intermediate crude oil peaked at $130 per barrel in March. The oil market has been much steadier than most energy analysts had expected. Concerns about China's economy are putting downward pressure on prices. High prices at the pump have simply been a cure, resulting in less driving by consumers. In the U.S., gasoline demand has dropped off significantly this summer, said the U.S. Energy Information Administration in a statement. But what do you think? Please hit the like button and leave us a comment below. We would love to hear from you. Please subscribe and hit the bell icon so that you are notified of upcoming videos when they are released. Please share this video on social media. Thank you for watching.